Yay! We're here in Alicia. We're here in Alicia. We're here in St. Louis. Right. This is Alicia's world. We just living in it. We're here in St. Louis again with Alicia. Super excited to have you. You've been like watching for a long time. You're leaving comments. We've been corresponding. Yes. So I'm so happy that I was able to get to St. Louis to see you.
I'm glad you're here too.
Thank you. So even though I have like some of your emails here, I wanted to talk. You were talking about going to county schools and busing, and so I kind of wanted to start there. I'd like to hear like some more about that.
Okay.
So
that's no problem.
Yeah, whatever you want.
Okay. Start.
You could curse. You could say whatever you want.
Okay. Ooh.
Whatever you want.
It's too early. But I will start with schooling. I first started going to county schools. That's what we call it in the city. County schools, which are predominantly white schools most of the time. When I was in middle school, and they first built a new school as a middle school. It's called Wildwood in Wildwood, Missouri. So it was like 4 or 5 hours. I remember going there on orientation with my mom on the bus. Like I fell asleep like twice. I'm like, Mom, how far is it? Like, do I really need to go this far? She's like, it might be better opportunities because in the cities, they don't teach you anything. She said in the cities, all they want to do is dress nice and fight. And I'm like, I don't know. I never been to a city school, but for elementary, so I don't know if that's 100% true. But I know her perspective as an adult, would give me more advice than me just going with my own wits as a child. So first experiences, I was kind of naive. I didn't expect much. I was like, okay, I was the smartest at my old school, so at this school I just have to try harder because there's more kids. Okay. But what I realized what was a major difference from going to a predominantly black school to a predominantly white school is that they're I want to say, more competitive, more academically competitive, and at the same time they're I don't want to say racist, but
racist. You can say racist.
They will pass you up even if you had a score. Sometimes they try to say you don't turn in homework. Like one time I was in school, my language arts teachers, we always had to turn in our things in folders and file it for her. So we just file it and put our things, and she just checks in, make sure we does it. So she had like an attitude towards it because it was mostly black kids in that class. So she just had like a tantrum. I don't know, somebody put piss in her coffee, or I don't know what happened that day, but she said everybody here does nothing. You're not going to be anything, and none of you. She said none of us do the homework in the class. So in my mind, I'm like, is she really trying to fail us all because she's upset, or is she doing this trying to, see if the ones that aren't, that are procrastinating are going to push themselves to do what they're supposed to. So she's passing off the grades for the class because it was semester end of the class or whatever, end of semester. I'm seeing I got a D when I turned in all my assignments, and I got A's on most of my assignments and 1 B. So I'm like, how is that average? I'm doing it myself on the calculator. I need to get the average of these 10 assignments that we just had 10 assignments. And she's like, well, y'all don't do this, y'all don't do that. You know what I did? Mama, I went to the principal's office. I said, well, I need to go to the principal's office. I need to speak to my mother. I need to let her know what's going on in this class because it's not right. Just because you feel a certain way towards a certain person doesn't mean you treat everybody the same way. You understand what I mean? So when I went to the principal's office, they were like, what's wrong? Because I was upset. I was emotional as a child, but I was there. I was, accountable, and I made sure I did what I was supposed to. So I was emotional for a reason. Yeah, because I'm like, passionate. I'm doing all this work. I'm staying up all night. I'm waking up at 4:30 in the morning just to get to school at 8, or sometimes at 9, getting late slips and stuff, and they're still making you tardy. It's like, you can't lose to win. So I went and called my mother. I was like, Mom, something's wrong with this teacher. I don't know what's going on. She's like, is she a white lady? I'm like, yeah.
Of course she's a white lady.
She's like, the first question. The first thing my mama came to her mind, she said she don't want them to do the teacher, Mrs. Tingle. Remember teachers, Mrs. Tingle, the evil teacher? She's like, tell her that she don't want me to do the teacher, Mrs. Tingle to her.
Anytime I hear somebody say like, this and this happened, I'd be like, was it a white person?
Yes, you already knowing it. It wasn't nobody like, because they'll understand you more than a person that just is like, whatever, all of y'all are the same. None of y'all going to be anything, or none of y'all going to, pursue anything in life. So I'm just going to, like they say, from the school to the pipeline to the correctional
pipeline. Yeah. So how did that get resolved? What ended up happening?
What ended up happening, I had to speak to the principal. My mother came up to the school. She talked to the teacher. The teacher basically got fired because they said it was racist remarks. At that time, I didn't know that she was being racist towards us. I just thought she was just trying to you know, because the class was already rowdy, try to make them more rowdy to make us seem like we were what she was speaking on. You know what I mean? So after that thing was done, I was like, okay, I'm not taking any more honors classes, AP classes. I can just take regular classes and do what I need to do just to get out of these type of schools and graduate and go to college.
That's so unfair.
It is unfair.
And then they'd be like, oh, black people never want to take honors classes or never want to be in this type of school, never want to be in that type of school. It's like, but when you do, you have to deal with these like racist ass fucking teachers trying to give you, and you're not the first person to say this.
I
like
know.
that they've been in like even with us, like the Black Americans, you're not the first person to be like, yeah, that they were in a certain type of class and the teacher was like racist towards them or giving them unfair bad grades in the class, or
like, what do you feel about slavery? What do you feel about it? Are you asking me, the only black person in this class, how do I feel about something that happened to my ancestors that was hurtful, that still is happening today because of the 13th Amendment? So why would you even ask me that? And that's why, I don't know.
Why did you have to get bused there?
Because it's 3 hours away. It's all the way in Walmart.
How did the program work? You said people got paid?
Yes, they get $90 per African American.
The school did?
They would even call you a cab girl. You'll miss a bus. Listen, I used to miss buses on my senior year, running late, because we had all different types, like I told you, substitute bus drivers didn't know where they were going, or missed bus stops, or just were Looney Tunes. So I'm like, okay, I call the school and say, well, I can't make it. You know, they're going to make sure I get there. They're like, well, we'll send a cab. We have vouchers. They want to make sure they get $90. So petty, $90. You know what I'm saying? Like, but it's for integrated schooling. For black kids to go to white schools, they get funded for it.
Because, so Jennifer, who we talked to yesterday, she also talked about how St. Louis is very segregated.
It is. We have 2 different unions for black and white police still.
Wow.
We still have 2 different unions.
Wow.
Exactly.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. We have a black union for African American or African descendants, and we have a white union for policemen. So what benefits, you know what I'm saying? What benefits them from doing that? From separating it, unless it's benefits that they're getting or they're retracting from the opposite race. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So,
and it's wild because people love talking about this stuff like, oh yeah, that stuff's over.
Never.
That stuff's in the past. That was like 50 years ago, 100 years ago, 150 years ago.
That was 5 minutes ago.
That was 5 seconds ago.
Walking down the street. What are they talking about? That's what I'm saying. It's a lot of people, their eyes are like, I don't even know if they're closed. There's just vacant. They see nothing.
The lights are on, but nobody's home.
Exactly. The screws are loose. Just gone. You know what I mean? Like, it's so many things that can happen to them, but until it turns into something that's so dramatic or traumatic, that's when they actually want to do something, when it shouldn't get to that point. You should already feel, not the guilt or the pain of your ancestors, but you should always feel that something, it just ain't right. You know what I mean? Like,
I feel like for us,
it don't add up.
I feel like for us, like for Black Americans, like everything is so close. Like everything for us is like right there.
Yeah.
Like you got bused because like St. Louis is segregated and they were trying to like integrate schools.
Yes.
I already have issues with that because it's like, why is it that the black kids were like bused into the white schools?
Exactly.
Why is it that if we're talking about like actual real integration, it should have been like,
should be coming to our
it should be like
too.
a two-way street to make sure that like all the schools are like brought up, but that's never what happens because nobody really cares about integration and
they care about capitalism. They care about getting money. They care about whatever system they're gonna put us in after we get
and like
it's
like assimilating us into the mainstream system. Like that's what all that stuff is like really about. Especially if they're giving like actual money for like black kids. Like that's
of course
what that's
they
about.
They get funded for it, but where does the funding go? Does it go towards the black kids, the transportation and get the black kids? Does it go towards any graduation, getting gowns or something for them because they're on an integrated special program? Like none of that, none of that goes.
Did you have to sign up for the program?
No. Once you're an African American student at the school, they automatically, when you're signing up for orientation, they put you on there. They put you on there. Yeah, they put you on the list. So it's, like you said, it's segregation. It never really ended. It just kind of put on a new face.
That's wild to me. I didn't know that. I never heard of that.
Integration.
That's very interesting. And I know like that specifically, like being bused in St. Louis, I didn't know about that. But I do feel like stuff for us be right there. And so even when people say like this stuff is over, like for you, it's like it literally was still like not even figurative, like not even figuratively still going on. But even in the sense of like things just like sort of changing, it's just like things change, but like the more they change, the more they stay the same. And it's just like, well, yeah, like maybe you're not being strung up from a tree, but like yeah, you being like shot and killed, and your body like left out in the street like for hours, you know. And it's like people don't, again, like the lights are on but nobody's home. Like people don't have no understanding of like maybe a little more now, maybe I don't know though. That might even be generous. It
is being generous because I think like we were talking about technology too, the smarter we get, the dumber we get at the same time, because not everybody's going to use those resources to help gain some type of sensibility of what's going on with them. Because before you act on anything, you have to know what's going on inside of you. What is pushing you to do these things? Why are you so angry sometimes if somebody does this? It could be generational, like you say, generational post-traumatic stress, or it could be something that you feel subconsciously is being done wrong to you, but you can't pinpoint what it is. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So it's like, I don't know. It's like our appetite for knowledge is there, but the appetite for the right kind of knowledge is not there.
I also feel like we live in a culture and a society at large, like a mainstream society that discourages questions across the board, but also like especially in Black people, like they don't want us to ask questions about things. So I feel like a lot of the times when you ask questions, it's all this like negative, it's like all this negative connotation to asking questions, like even if it's an innocent question, like
girl, that's my initials, ASK.
Oh really?
Yeah. So I'm always asking, you know, and I'm an Aquarius, so I'm like, listen, I'm gonna ask. Like
it's true though, because it's true. Like even if you you ask somebody house and you're like, oh, who made the spaghetti? Who made the potato salad? The first response is gonna be, oh, is something wrong with it?
Yeah.
Oh, why are you like why are you asking?
You ain't gotta eat my food.
Right, and it's just like but it didn't necessarily have to have like a negative. But we take questions in this really weird way, like as if questions are bad. And I think that there's definitely like a lot of, and I want to say like Black people and like Black Americans especially, it's just like, don't ask questions, don't be curious, don't ask why, sort of like just take it and put your head down and just like keep
your mouth shut.
Keep your mouth shut and just like keep going. Yeah, and keep going. And like that's what you're supposed to do. And then when you ask questions and when you try to figure out what the why is or like what's going on, why things are happening, a lot of times there's like all this pushback.
Yeah.
And so I do feel like even a lot of people that maybe were more curious when they were younger and stuff had it like
beaten out of them,
squashed out of them.
All these questions. You should know this.
Right, like why are you asking
like that?
Yeah, like
it's like that because it's like that because like I keep bringing up post-traumatic stress,
and that's post-traumatic slave syndrome too, as Joy DeGrasse says, like holdovers from slavery sort of traumatic echoes and behaviors that we will still do to this day without even really realizing it or understanding why. It's like a subconscious kind of thing. I do agree.
And it's like learned too, because I mean our great grandmothers, they might be 50, 80. My granny was 90 when she passed away. So she was a slave. She picked cotton. But at the same time, her experiences that she told me about, it seemed in my head as a child like it was something that, it was happening, like you said. It's 200 years ago. They not doing this stuff no more.
Granny 200 years old?
I said, Granny, they don't pick no cotton no more. She said, no, they had indentured slaves picking cotton in the South all the way to the 50s. So I'm like, okay,
let's talk about that a little bit, because some of what you have wrote me was about like your grandmother. I'll read you just like a little bit. So so we were talking about superstitions, which we can get into a little bit also, and you had said cayenne pepper in the shoe, which I had never heard of. So before I read this again, tell me what is it exactly?
It's supposed to keep the person that you don't want around, like banish them, like bye, don't come back.
Put cayenne pepper in your shoe.
In their shoe.
In their shoe.
In their shoe, like back in the South.
Y'all creeping around people's houses putting pepper in their shoes.
Most people tell you leave your shoes at the door. That's why I say I'm going to stay outside, because I don't know what you're going to do to my shoes, because I'm very superstitious. Like with my mother,
I am too.
when I went to the South for basic training, she was like, don't do this, 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 and this. I'm like, why? She's like, down South, they have traditions, and they have different things that they do that we don't do up here. So if you're not aware of that, you might get in trouble, or you might do something that you might regret. So I'm like, listen, Granny already told me about all this hoodoo, voodoo, all this witchcraft, and all this American history of us knowing about, herbs and everything. But the most important things, like she taught me, was like our actual history. And most of that we call witchcraft and all that stuff, that was tied into our oral traditions, our regular traditions. Like I used to tell you, we had prayer circles in our backyard when we stayed on Washington. We stayed here in St. Louis, and we'd just be barefoot in the backyard, just singing, just talking about what's going on in our lives and praying over each other and stuff. It was all women. So, and girls, because I was a little girl, but we all had that, like, camaraderie. And I remember my granny saying, this is traditional. You have to remember it. Even if, you know what I'm saying, even if I have boys, which I have 2 boys, I'm still going to teach them about communion with each other. That sacred bond that they have together, that sacred bond that they have with me. You know what I'm saying? So it's good to know some superstitions, and some superstitions you might, you know, make yourself not paranoid, but neurotic about it. Yeah. Like with the spaghetti stuff. Yeah. My mom said, don't eat no spaghetti. I was in basic training, like, I'm not eating nothing.
I don't eat spaghetti. I don't eat spaghetti that I haven't cooked. Like, I can't. I just can't.
I just can't eat it,
I just can't.
I'm like,
I eat spaghetti.
Mama? I'm like, no, I can't even look at it.
For anybody that doesn't know about this or has never heard this, the superstition is that you can't eat spaghetti that from a woman you don't know, or that you haven't prepared yourself, because she could put period blood in it and bind you to her. It's more so for men, but they say she'll put her period blood in it and, like, do, like, root magic on you. Yeah, control you. I can't eat spaghetti. Like, I will only eat spaghetti that I have cooked myself.
You haven't touched yourself, right?
I will only eat spaghetti that I have cooked myself. But, like, I'm also very superstitious. Like, I cannot split a pole. Like, I don't walk under ladders. You can't put my purse on the floor. We will fight.
Man, you're gonna be broke forever. Yes. Don't get my purse off the floor.
Get my purse off the floor. It's very serious.
Especially for black women, we know.
Don't put my purse on the floor. Like,
don't do that.
Don't sweep my feet
with the broom. Yes,
I've had my feet get swept across with the broom. It sends a chill down my spine. Like, don't sweep my feet with the broom. That's bad luck. Like, do not wear hats in the house.
Nope.
Don't whistle in the house.
Right. Don't whistle if you're a female, period. My mom's like, only if you're in an emergency. You don't whistle.
All that stuff will bring you bad luck. I believe it. And people be like, well, I don't believe it. And I'd be like, that's good for you. I believe it.
Right. My constitution tells me in my soul that this is not right. It don't feel right, and it's not going to be right.
It's like it says, I'm the one that believes it. I'm going to be the one that gets the fucking head.
That movie? The
Skeleton Key.
Yes.
Which we watched.
Yes.
Which we watched on the live stream. Yeah. It's like... And she got convinced, and it really ended up being,
with her mind.
Yeah, it ended up being real. Like, hair, a lot of people know about, like, don't throw your hair away.
Make a bird's nest out of it, get a headache, or somebody else take it and
do magic on you.
Make a little doll and do crazy stuff.
I normally burn my hair. I normally keep it until I have, like, a big ball, and then I burn it. Yeah, or I bury it.
That's
too.
What I do. I bury it. My plants, I bury it.
Yeah.
I'm done with it.
So it's just like. But it's funny, too, like, all these superstitions and things that we... And, like, when I did that video on, like, what is culture, it was also interesting for me to see how a lot of these superstitions and stuff were, like, regional. Yeah. Because, like, I can't remember one, but it was another one. I can't remember it right now, but it was another one that somebody had put that I had never heard of. Like, I had never heard of the hot cayenne pepper in their shoes. So somebody had wrote another one, and a person had left a comment that was like, where are you from? Because my mom always says this too. Yeah. And she's from Mississippi. And then the other person was like, I'm from Mississippi. She was like, girl, I knew you were from Mississippi. Because I've never heard anybody else say that.
Like that, you know, regions, it is.
Yeah, like, she was like, I've never heard anybody else say that. So, and then there is, like, some things also that a lot of us do across the board. Like, when we had filmed in New York, we was talking about, like, you cook black eyed peas and collard greens on New Year's for luck.
Yeah, good luck.
I know, like, a lot of people that do that sort of across the board. Yeah. Just, like, things, you know, things that we do. And I've seen people say, for example, that, like, black Americans don't have, like, rites, rituals, like, magic. I've seen people say this, like, or even, like, religious, you know, things, like... Because I was having a conversation with somebody one time, and she was saying how, like, you know, because our sort of ancestral, like, rights were, like, stripped away from us during slavery. And it was just such an interesting conversation, because she was like, you know, sort of how, like, you know, like, a lot of Spanish girls and, like, Hispanics and stuff, they have, like, they little, like, Santeria and, like, lighting candles and stuff. And I was Also, but you have to understand that, like, a lot of that stuff has, like, been informed by colonization. I was like, a lot of them they're Catholic. And I feel like for us especially, like, we kind of, like, move forward with the vestiges of what we did have, and we built upon it, and we built upon it, and we built upon it.
And that's culture.
And that's culture.
It is.
And even, like, all our little superstitions and our little traditions, I feel like that's not really seen as, like, part of, like, religious rites and rituals, which is interesting.
Yeah, for us to have credit, we would have to denounce everything. And actually assimilate, for them to actually say, okay, these are y'all, this is your African American history. This is a book on your ancestors. This is that. But most of the time, we're not going to do that. So they're going to try to keep that away from us, or tell us that's stupid. That's not. You don't know what you're talking about, girl. That's just crazy.
We have an oral tradition, so it's a part of me that feels like, why does it have to be in a book?
Right, for it to be culture, because that's how it gets assimilated into European standards.
Exactly.
Of how something is systemized, and this is the way it is, and this is how they pray. Right. They can't get us.
Exactly.
The point is, they can't get how we think, because we are so intuitive naturally.
Yeah.
And we are so deeply rooted, even if we don't want to admit that we are deeply rooted in, because they can't systemize that type of intuitive.
That type of knowledge.
Yeah, that knowledge. They can't.
That's why I said, I was like, I've never read.
So cookie cutter.
Yeah, like I've never read in a book.
Every
like, don't walk under a ladder.
Every region would have to have like a green book. Remember green books when they used to, these are all the black, stores or hair salons, whatever you needed in that specific state. They would have to make little green books for all our different traditions for every region, and that's impossible. So they would never be able to get us, because we encompass so much, even. With I was reading on your post when you were talking about I think it was in Caribbean or something, or a Spanish island, but the traditions from their African American history they brought to that island, they were still doing.
The Gullah Geechees, probably. The Sea Islands,
and that is, and they're still trying to push them out of their land, which is effed up
now.
But it's that tradition they couldn't take that from them, and they couldn't change their minds about who they was. Like, once you know who you are, can't nobody change your mind. That's for the military, too. I was 20 when I joined the military, so it was nothing you can tell me that you could tell a 16-year-old that'll make me doubt myself or not know how strong I am or why I'm here or what's my point of being, in that type of system. Now that I have the knowledge behind being in service, it's different things that I know that are encompassed within it, just like we have government. Just like we have school systems. All of this is an umbrella of the same, I don't want to say the monster, but the same system, basically. It's the same. It's all done and organized to basically keep you in a slave mentality. Mentally, not physically, because you feel like you're free, but you're still in a slave state of thinking. Because, they tell me I have to wake up at this hour, I wake up at this hour. They tell me I have to, hands across America, when you pick up like grass, like you're lawning with your fingers, picking up trash and grass, lawning. That's that in heat, in 98 or 90 degree heat at 8 o'clock in the morning. That's kind of like slaving us. Like all that stuff. Like when you put 2 and 2 together, like it's a mental thing, and it's also something that we feel like it's part of our life or our routine now, when it should be something that we, like you say, a lot of people don't question. You should question everything. Even your own thoughts. Question your own self. You know what I mean? Because if you don't, and you think you know everything, you're never going to grow from nothing. Nobody can tell you nothing. You can't grow from nothing, from nowhere. You don't have a basis. You don't have any type of lay down for a foundation for you to figure out what, like I keep saying, what's your next step. Because that's what our main motive is. Should be our main motive as black people. What is our next step? Right. We got enough Beyoncés. We got enough whoever else is. Can we have more humanitarians? Can we have more people that stay in that community and build a community? Instead of having it like all these millionaires. We know we got a bunch of millionaires. They say they're only 2% or 10%, whatever it is. I know with all that money they have, and they take percentages out of their taxes to help people that needs help. The
luxury tax. Yeah, we keep talking about a luxury tax
to help, the actual people that need help. I know a lot of people don't want that.
What do you think? I was gonna say. I was just about to say. What do you think about the people that say, "Well, that's not fair," because people should be able to control. They own money. They worked hard for that money. It's their money. They should be able to do whatever they want.
If the government is taking percentages, I don't know if you're
they already have to pay taxes.
Yeah,
so why
you do.
Not?
So you are paying taxes, but at the same time, if you're having a customer service type of thing where you're selling something, if the people you selling it to ain't got no money, sir or ma'am, how are they going to buy your products? So you have to think of the aspect of all of this is a cycle. If there's not enough people to pay for the things that you're trying to bring towards us, then it's not going to work. Mm-hmm. It has to be some type of reciprocation. Mm-hmm. So, like I was saying, like, they need to do some type of tax. And I know a lot of basketball players do this when they go back to their neighborhoods and build it up or build schools and stuff like that. But I just wish it was more. Mm-hmm. Because everybody's striving to have the new shoes or have a new hairstyle or have somebody look at them. Let's go on Instagram. Let's go on Facebook Live. Let's do this. Let's do that. Social media, having a big head.
Social media is such a weird thing. Like, for me, I feel like people, it's like so many, it's just like so much. For me, on the one hand, I feel like I do feel like people could buy like whatever they want. Mm-hmm. Like, if you want like shoes, if you want like clothes, if you want like whatever you want. And I do think that people should be allowed to like spend their money however they want.
Right.
So I feel like if you want to buy like a pair of Jordans, like buy it. I really don't give a fuck. Like, I personally don't like shaming people for like their choices.
No.
But I do feel like it's funny because like I'm also in favor of like a luxury tax and like taxing like wealthy people to create, you know, more sort of resources for like people that are on the bottom.
Right.
So I know that kind of sounds, there's people that would be like, well, how come poor people can spend their money however they want, but like rich people got to give money back? I don't know. That's just how I feel like. Right. I feel like, because I also feel like what a lot of people don't take into account is that like people, well, this is like a whole other beast. I was going to say that people get their little bit of like joy or like happiness however they can. Mm-hmm. Now there is something to be said for like tying your joy and your happiness to like materialistic items of like, well, if I buy this or if I have this, then I'll be happy. That is sort of like a capitalist mindset of like tying your value, consumerism, tying your value to money, tying your value to things. But it's like I can't speak for anybody because like I like shoes, like I like clothes, like I like fashion, like I spend my money on things that people probably think is like dumb or whatever, but I think it's all about balance too, because it's like in addition to like some of the things that I spend my money on for like I like food, like I'll spend money on food because it does make me happy, like it does, you know,
dopamine high.
Yes, like it does, so right, it does. So it's like, but I do also try to have a balance of like also spending money with Black-owned businesses and like trying to like do things to support and like use my platform in certain types of ways. Right. So I do think that there is a balance that could be found like between the two, but I don't really like telling people like, oh, y'all shouldn't be buying those Jordans and this, that, and the third, because I also feel like, I don't know, we just never know people's situations, and it's just like you don't know, like somebody might have like got nothing new all year. And
or they might be donated to them, because a lot of people be like, hey, you ain't got no shoes on, I take the shoes off my feet, so it could have been, you know, or paying it for from somebody else.
Yeah, like, all kind of stuff. Like I hate seeing those posts and stuff where they be like, oh, I seen somebody on like the latest iPhone, but like they riding the bus. Why don't they have a car? Maybe they don't want a car.
Right.
Maybe the bus works for them just fine.
Maybe they're healthy and they actually like to use their leg.
Because it's also like nobody knows. We don't know. People have different like priorities and just all different types of things.
Yeah, and
everybody's different. And I do think, but it's just like such a interesting kind of like vast conversation, because I do feel like I see like a lot of like different points. But I also feel like with that type of conversation too, it's very easy to like get a little bit into respectability politics and like just shaming people, and also not having an understanding of like people are like different level. People at different levels also spend money on different types of shit. Because I also hate when I see people say like, you never seen Bill Gates buying motherfucking Jordans. It's like, yeah, but Bill Gates was probably buying like $900 like black turtlenecks, like them black turtlenecks that he used to wear the same. They'd be like, he wore the same black turtleneck every day. It's like, yeah, but that black turtleneck was probably like Hermes, like that black turtleneck probably
was
cost
knitted by little babies or something,
like,
gifted children, the blind or something. You don't know what's going on.
Like they be having, like people be having so much money that they be spending money on a whole other level. Like they not buying $250 Jordans. Like no, but they're buying $7,000 watches.
They buying jacuzzis in a Lamborghini.
Right.
We ain't never gonna see.
They're not buying. They're not buying $250 Jordans. They're buying Balenciagas for $975.
Right.
You know, like
exactly. No, their lunch was $250.
Yeah, they're right. Like they're spending money in a totally like different way,
yeah.
And so like a lot of these comparisons, I feel like ultimately can end up even being false equivalences and ways for Black people especially to sort of like finger wag at each other and like, why aren't you doing this and like, why aren't you doing that? I just feel like ultimately we need to be more invested, sort of like what you were saying earlier, and like how do we build up our communities?
Right. What's the next step for us? Because like you said, everybody's different. Yeah. So what's the next step for you might be different from me, might be different from the next person.
Yeah.
But you have to know where you're coming from first. Do what you feel is your next step. Do what you feel is comfortable in your soul purpose to do.
Not to like pivot, but I wanted to ask you this like earlier. What was there a reason why you joined the military? Because you have brought up joining the military.
I joined the military when I was younger. At that time, I was very... I don't know. I wouldn't say militant minded, but I was very strategic, and it seemed like the jobs that I was applying for, I just didn't feel like it was right for me. Like it felt like I was pushed towards that, you know, like consciously or subconsciously. My conscious like, you need to do something different. You need to, if this is something that you want to do, you need to do it now. You know what I'm saying? And if you have that experience, you had that experience. If you go on with it, you go on with it. You know what I'm saying? But you have to take it for what it is and try my hardest, and that's what I did. And then at the same time, I was thinking about my family. I always think about my family first. That's before I had kids. My grandmother and my mother. I'm like, okay, do we have life insurance in this house? Nobody talks to me. I'm the smartest person anywhere, and I'm saying. But I always overthink things. So if anything comes up, I'm already on it. You know what I mean? So with the life insurance things and making sure mortgages are paid and different things that an average person that's a homeowner or an older person that has, you know, properties has to go through. So I was like, okay, if something happens to me, at least I have a backup for them that can pay off this, that can pay off that. They'll be able to, whatever, cremate, bury, whatever. But they'll be prepared for that. You know what I'm saying? They'll have money backed up for that generational wealth that I was talking about. So now I'm not in the military. I still have the benefits. I still have the insurance. Now that goes to my kids now because my grandmother passed. My mother's getting older. So... You know,
I feel like something I feel like about the military is that our military in the United States, for the most part, is like a poor people. It's like a poor people's military for exactly what you said. Like the majority of the people. Now you have some people, white people mostly, that are like legacy. Like my grandfather,
Air Force,
right, and my father,
he's a lieutenant, he's gonna get me this job.
Patriotism, you know, whatever. We're proud to be a Marine family, military family. But I feel like for most, especially like Black Americans, it more so comes from exactly what you said of like, well, I'm poor and I need a way out, or I need a way to get money, I need a way to get health insurance, I need a way to get an education. And it's very,
these things
and that seems so like it seems so predatory. It seems so predatory, and I feel like people don't talk about it enough, and how predatory it is, because people always love bringing up like American imperialism and like Western imperialism and the military, which is like perfectly valid because like the military is like the arm of imperialism, like destabilizing abroad. But I think people don't talk enough about like the predatory nature of the military and how it like preys on poor Black Americans in a certain type of way that almost like, why does all that stuff have to be attached to the military?
That's what I'm saying.
Like it's predatory.
It
like
is.
they prey on poor people, and most poor people are
black people.
But it's like such a predatory nature, and it's like I feel like it's never really talked about in that type of way. And then you come back and like yourself, like it's post-traumatic stress, and like
they don't care.
Historically, like we haven't even received our benefits in the way that we're supposed to for even serving in the military. And I feel like it's such the whole perspective of the conversation, I always feel like it comes from this like really weird place, like, and not talking about the people that like did it because like they had no options. They were out of options, you know, like when you list your reasons, it was just like, I felt like I had to because I was supporting a family. Like, what was I supposed to do? It was like, it was like,
I'm not going to work somewhere I don't want to work at, and it's something that's telling me, well, we'll do this. I'm like, what? And then you're going to pay me stipends? If I have a family, like if you get married, you get paid for how many kids you have, your spouse. Like, they'll move them where you are. They'll pay for apartments, condos, all this different type of stuff. I'm like, y'all can do all this. What about the other 95% of people that are sleeping on park benches?
We have all this funding and all this money, all this budget that's allocated for military spending, and a part of that is what
war,
goes,
and then war goes back to consumerism, fine.
It's literally trillions.
Yeah.
It's like, what if we took it's like the military has all these resources to like be so predatory and like draw people in with like, we could do this for you, we could do that for you, because they already have like all this money that's like allocated for them in addition to the resources that they get from like destabilizing abroad. It's like, what if we like gave them less money and we just like spread that money out across the board so people could have housing and education without having to join the military? Like, it's so predatory. It's like, so capitalist.
It is. And then at the same time, when I came back, I was in my head, the first thing I was thinking is, why don't we have, like, we have the reserve, we have the National Guard, why don't black people have our own, like the Deacons of Defense or Black Panthers or stuff like that? Why don't we still have those type of, we're gonna watch, like even black like leaders, they don't do much. Church leaders don't do much no more. You know what I'm saying? Help people who actually need it. Yeah, I know. When it was flooding, somebody needed help.
She got real serious. She talking to y'all.
I'm just saying. It's.
No, you're great. You going.
Girl, listen, I have these conversations every day.
No, you're awesome.
Sometimes, listen, girl, they almost called, they did call police on me on Easter because I was talking about some stuff I wasn't. So I guess somebody over here me like, she can't say that.
Where were you? Who called the police on you?
Porch, girl.
Somebody called the police on you on your front porch talking?
I was having a conversation with my sister-in-law, and we were talking about, she's a nutritionist, so she likes herbs and stuff like that, and I was telling her what herbs I know about and stuff like that. The whole block heard us. I don't know. We probably are.
What did they call the police? What was it for? What did they say?
They're like, the police came around. Yeah, but we didn't go to jail. The guys were just like, ladies, you don't have to keep that down. Like,
why do you have to keep it down on your own porch, on your own property?
That's the St. Louis. This is what I'm talking about. That whole, we are your watchdog still. And we're watching over you, even though you don't
Big
see
Brother
us.
is watching.
Exactly.
You.
We always a block away, just in case y'all get out of hand. But like I was saying, the leaders that call ourselves leaders, church leaders and program leaders and stuff like that, we need to have more programs where we can defend ourselves legally and still have, you know what I'm saying, a building of minds that can come together. Because not everybody's going to think the same, but block by block, you need to have somebody that's going to actually be a block leader that helps, like, on my block. I don't want to talk too much about it. I don't know where I stay. She do, but anyway, on my block, there's, like, big trees, forests. You can't see down the street when you should be able to see down the street. Trees covering the lights. You can't see at nighttime. It's so dark. If you're a leader, call the forestry, call St. Louis City, have that knocked down, and be less crime because you can see who's coming on your porch. You can see who's coming behind you when you get in your car. You know what I'm saying? You can't see that if the lights are covered by big, massive trees.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, they don't really, like we were saying.
I feel like we lost a lot of that. I talk so bad about integration. I know I talk so bad about integration and people are going to be mad. But, like, I really do feel like we lost a lot of, like, our ability. Let me not say ability.
Yeah.
I feel like we lost a lot of our initiative.
Yeah.
Initiative is a good word. I feel like we lost a lot of our initiative to be autonomous. Yeah. And I feel like autonomous communities, and like I've done videos on like community patrolling and how we need to like become more autonomous, more independent.
Yes.
Take more charge of like our own neighborhoods and doing for self, doing for ourselves instead of expecting and
somebody to come in
relying
and do it
on
for
somebody
us.
else to come in and do it for us. And I feel like, again, I just feel like so much of these ideas and changes in ideas stem back to integration. Like, because it was just like in a lot of ways, like prior to integration, again, it was like we did for self because we had to. It's like you can't call the white police if somebody's like breaking in your house. If you live in an all black neighborhood, segregated neighborhood, and somebody's breaking in your house, you literally cannot call the white police. You can't call the white police because the white police might come and like lynch you.
Shoot everybody.
Like, you know,
the whole street is gone.
Right. If you get hurt, you can't go to the white hospital because like the white hospital literally will not take you. So you probably have to drive like fucking 50 miles
and
to
get
dead. And be half dead. Like, and it's like wild because like the conditions as to like why we had to do for self were fucked up. So like, don't get me wrong, like the conditions were fucked up. The emotional and like the physical like terrorism by like the system of white supremacy was like fucked up. But like we were placed in a position where like we'd be stuck between like a rock and a hard place. You're gonna like find a way.
You have to. Your neighbor who is a black American, you have to deal with them without, you know,
getting
saying,
white people involved.
I have to involve Susie because Susie does this and she's part of the corporation, but you have this person next door to you that you don't even know. That's networking.
Yeah.
That whole
and I think
system.
we lost a lot of that. We lost a lot of that once we became I hate saying integrated because we were not integrated. Assimilated. Yeah. And integration sounds like such a nice word. Like, that's not what happened.
No.
I feel like we lost a lot of that initiative once we got assimilated into the mainstream white culture and the mainstream white society, because now it just became this like, well, I don't have to do it. I wanted to get into some of the stuff that you sent me.
Okay.
Because some of the stuff that you sent me I really, really liked.
Okay.
So, you said... You were talking about your grandmother. You said as a child until now you were really invested in knowing about folklore and your roots. You said that your grandmother was born in the 1920s and she was a really big influence on the person that you are today. And from a child, you said you always knew she was different from her dialect. It was like strange. Where was she from?
She was from Arkansas.
Oh, okay.
So she talked funny to me. But she sounded very, like, country, bumpkinish. But she wasn't... I mean, she's from the country. They had horses and all this different type of farming and stuff like that. But she was slaved in the city since she was 16. So it's like, what, Granny?
Yeah.
Your accent must be really harsh, you know, because you're older and I still hear it. And you've been here for a long time in the city. And they say people in the city sound like we from the South, too. But she really sounded twangish. Like, I'm like, Granny.
And you also said you were like, she picked cotton in the fields, so in the fields
she did pick cotton.
In the fields of Arkansas. You wrote like your grandparents were indentured slaves and your great grandparents were slaves as well, and that your great grandmother picked wheat and milled in the Carolinas, and that your spiritual background is a mesh of hoodoo and folklore practices. And this is the part that I was saying earlier. Yeah. You said my grandmother told me about the beauty of her life. She didn't comfort me with lies. Even if it made me uncomfortable, she told me her truths. I thought that was very interesting. You said she didn't comfort you with lies. Like, what do you mean by that?
No, I mean, like, nowadays, and probably back in the day, it's a lot of things that you would probably hide from children because you don't want their innocence to be wiped away so fast. But it's also an obligation as parents, as me being a parent and as she being my grandparent, you have to let them know something from home, because if they don't, they learn it from the street. It might be the end. It might be the death of them, or it might be an awakening, and they be like, why am I awakening now? And you could have told me all this stuff while you was here on this earth, so I can have some type of, you know, not conditioning, but deprogramming of how I'm supposed to be, how I'm supposed to act. Oh, I know, don't be the loud black lady. Don't do this, don't do that. But in the end, these are stereotypes that are conflicting towards us, because at the end of the day, we're not mad or mean unless we're pushed. But if we're pushed, we have to be naive, or we have to act like we're so docile that nothing, we can't do anything, because if we do something, they're going to kill us on the spot. So we have to be like head down, like you said, tail between your legs. But it's not. All the history that she was telling me about pit parties where white people would like basically barbecue black people on big ass grills and be taking pictures with their lamps, smiling, or taking pictures at lynchings, like having parties at lynchings while the body's still hanging there defecating on itself. Like, or like my mom's ex, he passed away. He told us about, like, if a white lady walks past you, you dunk your head in some water. You dunk your head down. He had to dunk his head into water. So they say he didn't look at her, because if they thought he looked at her, or the boys that he was with looked at her, they would lynch them all. Or if you're going, say for instance, you're walking on a pavement, the white people coming this way, you coming that way. you got to step in some mud. It don't matter if it's down.
And that's even till now. They expect you to move. And I won't. I refuse.
I don't go nowhere.
I've bumped shoulders with a lot of white people.
Girl.
Like,
I don't care. Right. Exactly.
How do you navigate that with your children, with your sons?
With my kids, like with homeschooling, because I homeschool too.
You homeschool?
Yes, ma'am. I do it like 3-4 days because I work most of the time, but 3-4 days out of the week. But with my kids, like the first thing I taught my oldest, John Patrick, I taught him about being proud of who he is. What's that song? Esperanza Spalding. I used to sing that song. Is it Young, Gifted, and Black? I used to sing that song.
It was originally Nina Simone.
Yeah, and Aretha Franklin and Otis Redding. They all made different versions of it, but that version I used to sing to him as a lullaby. Mm-hmm. So, like, say for instance, they say when you're pregnant, put Mozart on your belly so your baby can be smart. Okay, if that can work as a child growing up, as a baby growing into a man, I want you to be able to, from sight, know that you are black and proud. The first thing I say, you black and you what? I'm black and I'm proud. Mm-hmm. You say it loud. Say
it loud.
Yeah, that's what his little brother teacher, he be like, say it loud. I'm black and I'm proud. Okay, you have that self-awareness. You have that ability to have an unquavering, like an unquaking sense of self that nobody can take from you. Even if you at your lowest, I want them to have something from me that's worth more than material, worth more than, I would love to leave them generational wealth because that's something I'm working on, but knowledge.
Yeah.
Knowledge is the main thing that I wanted to give them from the womb to the tomb. I want them to know everything that I know before I leave this earth, because it's dire for our kids not to be like just massively populated with all this information that is just contradicting or it's saying
brainwashing, propaganda.
Yeah, programming you to think that you are this, you are that, you are this other type of person that you know it doesn't match what you feel as a person. So, like I said, knowing their self-worth, knowing where they come from, like the history of the booklets I was telling you about earlier of our family history that are way old, I want to say like 50, 60 years old. And we still have them. I read to them about their black ancestors. We have our specific codes. We have our specific languages. We speak to each other slangs. We have our traditions of talking about like myths and legends, or when you were talking about the boo hag will get you. Mm-hmm. Now, my granny didn't call it the boo hag. She would say the witch lady go get you. I'm like, Granny, no. Like saying the little stuff gonna get to your kids, and she gonna ride you all
she gonna
night.
Ride you. If you a bad kid, she gonna ride you all night. My grandma used to tell me that all the time. When you bad, she gonna ride you all night.
Yeah, and what was bad about that was I would stay up because I want to see her. Where you at? So I can tell Granny where I sleep her, or I didn't see her. But yeah, like traditions, regional traditions, like we were talking about earlier.
I've been asking a lot of people, how would they describe the culture of their city? Mm-hmm. So how would you describe the culture of St. Louis? And everybody says like, "Ooh, that's so hard. Like it's so interesting."
It's not hard, but it's like I have to put my words together so it'll y'all can see the picture that I'm trying to paint.
Okay.
So St. Louis and East St. Louis were like predominantly, I want to say, black hard-working people that were there, and they made the cities like popping. Like in New York, it was popping. Okay, 1911 came. We had the 100 people march down in silence because their town was burnt down, their children were killed, over jobs. Mm-hmm. And that didn't stop in 1911. Mm-hmm. That kind of stayed as we progressed in the years and the decades go by. East St. Louis just deteriorated, and most of the people that were in East St. Louis went to St. Louis. And then when they went to St. Louis, they saw that it was more segregated than it was in East St. Louis. Mm-hmm. So if I could explain how St. Louis is, or how Missouri in general is, we had laws that black people couldn't be out at a certain amount of time in the 80s, or you get lynched. In Centralville, Illinois, and Missouri, different places you could not go. My brother wrote an article when he was like 11 or 10 about hiding in the back seat of my auntie, she's a white woman, of my auntie's car with her grandson. And they had to hide because the grandson had to hide too because he looked mixed, and they was gonna mess with him too. Mm-hmm. It don't matter. They gonna mess with you. You look black, they gonna mess with you. So they had to literally hide from the police under rags and blankets until they basically looked over the car and said, okay, you can go, because they were after curfew. Mm-hmm. So it's like a lot of things that we feel are just monetized to certain areas. In St. Louis, it's like we don't know. It's perpetrated in the dark more than it is in the light nowadays. But it's still that same type of mentality of we don't need y'all.
But you wouldn't leave St. Louis.
I would.
You would.
I would definitely leave St. Louis. I would want to live on an island somewhere. I'm the type of Aquarius
you
that
needs
needs
live on an island.
time. I need my alone time, okay?
Homeschool your son.
Yes.
How is homeschooling too? I did want to ask you a little bit earlier.
Good. They're learning. Well, my oldest, he loves planets, so I'm teaching about the different moons of Jupiter. And my youngest, he's really good at like architectural building. Like, so I went from regular blocks to like wood blocks, and now he's with clay. He's only 3. Wow. He can build like spaceships, buildings, and stuff like that. And it reminds me of my father when he was little. I think my aunt said he was 3 or 4. He took apart the remote control and made a little robot.
Wow.
And made a remote for the robot.
Wow.
He was really smart. So I'm like that generational knowledge, just like we have trauma that can get passed down, that generational genius
can get
passed down. It's going good with them. They like sponges. Girl, listen. When John Patrick was, I think he was 1 and 1.5, I started teaching them days a week in French and stuff like that. And then when TJ turned 2, I was teaching him French too, and they love it. They absolutely love it.
How do you like get your resources for it and do your lesson plans?
And just I get my book that I have to document everything legally, document everything that I'm doing, like comprehensive work and mathematics and stuff like that. I have to write down how they're doing. I don't grade it on like they got 100% or this, that, or the other. I grade it on did they understand or not. I put a check or an X, and then if I have an X by it, that means I have to go over it again, teach them, and then retest, so they get the knowledge. Because in schools they test you once. If you fail it, you failed.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? They don't give you second chances. So I think it's better too that I'm homeschooling them because they give themselves more chances. You don't have to perfect yourself, but you have to understand that knowledge don't come in one day.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Wisdom don't even come in one day. You have to keep, routine.
And black kids are also over-policed in school. So I did a video on homeschooling, which I feel like you might have left a comment on, but I don't know. I'm not sure.
I don't know.
It's funny because I did a video on black homeschooling because like black Americans are actually like the #1 fastest demographic in the United States of parents that are homeschooling. Yeah. Because a lot of black Americans are just like, I'm not sending my kids to these schools. Like they're not learning anything. It's revisionist history. They're suspended.
Yeah.
They're getting failed because the teachers are racist.
And they don't want to teach them.
Yeah, they sicking the police on them. Like, I'm gonna just keep them at home.
Yeah, there's too much going on. It really is. The demographic of schooling, going public schooling, private schooling, any type of schooling outside of your home. It's a lot of violence that goes on, shootings and stuff like that. You have to have that in your mentality too. Am I putting myself and my child in danger?
Would you ever send them to like structured school environment? Are you planning on doing it maybe later on?
Maybe when they're like, I want to say 14, 15, do half days. So just in case they find something interesting at schools, a specific school that we're going to have to research together and go to that school together. Yeah. Well, I'm that type of mom. We're going to go to school together that first day. I don't care. I'm going to be sitting in that class. Yes, I got the answer. My baby got the answer. He got the answer. Don't she, John Patrick? And
like that movie. What movie was that? I think that was like Glory Road or something. That was the movie. The mom was in there.
Yeah.
Someone else that we talked to, K.A. Freeman in Columbus, he homeschooled his son for a year because he felt like his son was being unfairly persecuted in school. He said that his son was in a science class and they were like doing chemistry and stuff, and they had the fire. Yeah. And the police were called on his son. They tried to charge his son with like arson.
Are you serious?
So he was just like, oh no, yank.
Right.
Homeschool.
That's like, y'all just took that little bit and turned it into something that it wasn't even. Y'all are in class.
The criminalizing of us and our children.
Exactly. And our children, that's what I'm saying with the innocence. Nowadays, you can't really be that innocent, but you have to know things can get serious fast. Not everything is a joke. We can have fun around each other, but it's certain groups that you have to be aware of, be alert of, keep yourself grounded, you know what I'm saying? Know how to protect yourself. Know when you feel a feeling, don't just let that feeling stay there. You get up and you do what you have to do so you can preserve self-preservation. Yeah. We have to teach our kids to preserve themselves. And that kind of not crosses all innocence, but it kind of takes away from it a little bit at a time, because the more you know, the more you like, okay, that innocence is kind of gone. I know about this, that, and the other, and I know life.
So do you feel like it's a trade-off of like
it has to be
protection for innocence, I guess?
Not protection, but more like preservation. So it's the preservation has to happen. And the innocence, I'm not saying they got to be taken all the way away, but as they learn, as you show them different perspectives of how life may be or how life could be, that kind of, it matures them, but that's a good way of maturing them, not just throwing them out there, because you don't want them to be shocked by every little thing. If you just culture shock them and throw them out there with no knowledge and just, do your thing, like most black families in St. Louis, they just throw them out there, like, you 18, bye. Yeah.
I want to read a little bit more about your family stuff.
Okay.
And I also want to talk really quick, and then we'll wrap, about the urban farming too.
Yes.
So something else that you said, our most notable kin dates back to 1774. Your great-great-grandmother, Martha Ray, who spent most of her life on a plantation. Mm-hmm. They sold half of her children, and then her and her beau, use the word beau, they fled with their remaining children to a farm miles away. This was before the emancipation of blacks. So a lot of the times your great-grandmother who was passing had to pretend that her children were her slaves in order to keep them from being harmed, from being caught, which I thought was like a really, really interesting thing. Mm-hmm. And you also just talked about how since they like fled to a farm, they learned a lot about farming, they learned a lot about the land, and that's also been something that's been sort of like passed down through your family. And I know you were also like doing the urban farming classes and stuff. So I just wanted to touch on that with you a little bit before we like wrap, because I know we've been going. So
I told you, freestyling with me is like we could be here all day.
And I'm the same way. So, but I know we're probably like getting a little bit to the end. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that. How do you feel about like farming, and especially within black families and black communities, and how you sort of are also relating that right now to urban farming. Yeah, and stuff of that nature.
So with the urban farming, I started, I want to say in 2014. Mm-hmm. I started taking classes. Now I'm actually an instructor at
congratulations.
Yes, ma'am.
High five. Because I just finished my program too. Yeah,
I'm so proud of you. You were telling me about it. I was like, don't, girl. Yes. You don't love it. But the main reason I pursued urban farming, like you said, it was my great-great-grandmother, her love for it, and my great-grandmother's love for it, and this being told about, being able to make your own food or, make meals from food that you've grown from your own hands instead of relying on store-bought things. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Because at any time in my mind, they could say, all your food is poisoned. And we forgot to check it, so we got to close down all the stores. Or something happens with electricity, cut everything off, and now we don't have nothing refrigerated. The store's food is not gonna be no good. So what do we do now? Mm-hmm. Or Trump could say, ain't no more farmers. I ain't paying y'all. You know what I'm saying? Or whoever else
put it on Twitter.
Right. No more farms. No fresh fruit. For all you haters. For all you haters, no more pineapples. For all you haters, no more pineapples. No more this, no more that.
I'm so tired of this man. Please continue. Fireman. We can't get into him. We can't get into him.
Self-autonomizing, knowing how to make your own food, knowing how to grow your own food, knowing about cropping, knowing about in-house, you can make herbs out of glass jars. You can put an herb in and it'll grow. It'll just keep growing. Potato plants. A lot of things that we can incorporate, even though most of the time we're relying on grocery stores. It's a good knowledge to have. Yeah. Just in case anything happens. You might be broke next year. You be like, damn, I wish I could make a tomato, lettuce, and bacon sandwich. You ain't got no pig. I don't know if you have a farm with a pig, but you could be like, I got some tomatoes out back, got some lettuce. You know what I'm saying? I can make bread from the wheat, flour, put it in the oven, and I'm done.
I feel like I see a lot more black people and black Americans getting into the idea of land sovereignty and understanding, because it's like we have roots in agriculture because slavery, right?
Like cropping.
Like we literally have roots in cropping and crops and agriculture. after slavery, we were sharecropping. We were on farms.
We were selling stuff at the farmers markets to each other.
Similar to how sort of we also used to have this kind of medicinal knowledge with midwifery and things of that nature. You had kind of, I always say and this is historical, like I didn't make this up, like you had big pharma and you had big agra. So you had like the big pharmacies that came in and they sort of separated us from the medicinal knowledge, the holistic. And then you had big agra that came in and they separated us from the agriculture and the agricultural knowledge, because it's like, well, why should you know how to work farms and crops and agriculture when we can separate you from it and we can grow it and we can sell it to you
and make a profit.
Capitalism. I hate capitalism. It's the devil is everywhere.
It is
horrible. It ruins everything it touches.
And every time I see capital, I'm like, the capitalism.
It ruins everything. and again, it was like the same thing with medicine. Like, why should we let you do midwifery and deliver your baby at home when I can separate you from that and I can charge you $10,000 to have your baby?
Or $20,000, depending on what
in a hospital, right?
How many days you stayed.
And then even when we're getting into land sovereignty and the fact that we own so much of our own land, we own so much of our own property, our farms, things of that nature, even though we really never even received what we were supposed to in terms of our 40 acres and a mule, how that was stripped from us and how it was stripped from us so systemically of like, oh, y'all didn't pay the bullshit ass taxes, land is gone.
That's our land.
Or we want that land because that's like acres and acres of like prime farmland, prime land for having livestock
predatory.
Predatory. So we're gonna like lynch somebody. We're gonna
scare y'all out.
We're gonna scare y'all out of your own towns. We're gonna scare you off your own land, and then we're gonna seize it. And like that's how like the majority of the land got like seized from us. Neocolonialism got seized from Black. It's very interesting to me because it's like Black Americans were like primarily like agricultural and like living in the South, right? Yeah. And then it was like we were literally ran out of our towns, ran off our land, ran out of our homes, had our property seized from us, lost it. And then was like fleeing, especially like racial violence, things of that nature. And so the Great Migration of the 20s that had us sort of like moving, not just to the north, but like out west and into the Midwest where we are now to populate the cities. And now it's like the neocolonialism is happening again in the form of gentrification. Because white people have decided like, then now they want to live in the cities. So they're utilizing a lot of the same exact tactics to now push us out of the cities, and kind of like push us into the suburban areas. And we don't have the tools, right? Like we don't have the tools because it's even like, even if people wanted to like leave the cities and move out, we don't necessarily have the tools that we had previously to grow our own food and things of that nature. So it is really interesting to me to see a lot of more Black Americans becoming more interested in, again, like land sovereignty and agriculture and cropping, farming. I just finished my urban agriculture program. There's a lot of programs in D.C., Maryland, and in Virginia. There's a lot happening in Baltimore with like Black farmers and food alliances. Which I always use as this example, after the murder of Freddie Gray during the Baltimore uprising, they declared a state of emergency. So there's no trucks coming in or out with the food for the grocery stores. Baltimore already suffers from food deserts, which so many Black neighborhoods and communities, it's no grocery stores, it's nowhere to get your food. And so people were literally starving, but it was like, somebody that runs a community garden, a church that they grow vegetables in the backyard. And they ended up forming a food alliance because people had nothing to eat, like you said. So I hope more of us can sort of get into that. For anybody watching that is interested in that, I highly recommend University of Maryland Extension. If you go look on the University of Maryland, it's UMD like X website. They have a lot of like really free materials and resources like PDFs and stuff you could download on agriculture. Because I definitely think that that's something that more of us should sort of get into moving forward, especially as we continue to talk about sort of like forming autonomous communities where we can do for self. That includes food. Because we need it.
Exactly, we do. We need to live.
We need it to live.
And to piggyback off of what you were saying with the gentrification in more of the neighborhoods where you see, mixed communities where it was predominantly Black, now they are building like community gardens because there's no food
Co-ops,
there.
Grocery stores, all of a sudden they pop
All of a sudden they're there. Where does Walmart come from? It was a liquor store. I'm just saying, but what I mean? Like, it's like, what are y'all doing?
And that's also because of capitalism. Because at the end of the day, a grocery store exists to turn a profit. A grocery store does not exist to feed people.
Us, no.
Otherwise, it'd be giving the food away for free.
Like in Sweden.
Yeah.
Where they just open up some things. It's like a day old. And it's not like it's old. It's like a day old of food that they have out.
And we waste so much food in the United States, too, that we just throw it away.
Yeah.
But it's like a grocery store exists to turn a profit. So they look at a big map, and they say like, oh, well, this area, the east side of St. Louis, that's a predominantly black, low-income area.
And
so if we put a grocery store over there, we're not going to be able to turn a profit because it's a low-income area. They don't have enough money. So we're not going to put a grocery store over there. We're going to put a grocery store over here where it's a high-income area where the white people live because they're going to be able to go and
straight there,
buy the food and pay the high exorbitant prices and pay us
taxes and
big agriculture so that we could turn a profit. Capitalism, we can generate capital, and so that's why you have the people that need it the most do not have it because they don't have the money. And it's true that like once the gentrification happens and they push those people out and then they bring people that have more money in, that's why it pops up because now all of a sudden.
And they're bank owned. Like most of them that I'm seeing are like U.S. banks, community gardens. I'm like, where's the U.S. bank at in this community? Yeah. Why can't it be like? It's a vicious cycle. You know what I'm saying? And then again, we don't know what percentage of these sponsored sources that are building these, these gardens are giving back to the community, or is it coming back to them where it's like, okay, this is gonna go on loans for our bank, or this is gonna go on something else. It's like you said, a cycle of capitalism. We have something that y'all want. Y'all don't have no food here. Y'all just have little corner stores or whatever you want to call it, bodegas. So this is all you can, get from. They have chicken coops too down the street from the house. They have chickens and stuff like that. But that's the actual community one. But the ones that I was seeing, like when I stayed on the south side, like mostly bank owned. Yeah, I'm like. You know what I'm saying?
And then, and again, getting back to like how it's systemic, it's like even to open up a community garden, for example, 9 times out of 10 you have to open it up on public land. So it's land that's owned by the city.
Right.
So you have to go through the city and you have to follow the city rules and the city regulations and the city ordinances. And at any moment the city could be like, oh, actually we need this land for something. We're going to need this land for a developer. Or like I was talking to some people because I went to this conference at Eastern Shore, like urban agriculture conference. And these people, black people that run a community garden in Southern Maryland were like, one day we went out and there was a dude out there cutting the grass and like cutting all of our plants and stuff because the city hires people because like grass that you see on the street in the city, it's the city's like job to like get contractors to cut it, maintain it. So they were like, the city just like hired somebody to like cut all the grass and like all the city ordinances, and that included like where our community garden was. And since we didn't own the land, it was public land, we couldn't do anything. So that's even getting more into like how things are so systemic and how it's like set up. It's just set up a certain type of way. And I totally agree with you that that's also why people and the system at large find like independent black communities, especially black American ones, to be so threatening. Because it's just like, oh, if these niggas get a little something outside of the city that we can't control, that we can't regulate, that we can't capitalize off of, make money off of, like, what are we going to do? They have all this power. Like they can't control us anymore. So I think that that's also, it's like something we really need to like think about moving forward.
And like legal laws of your city. Know them. Or try
legal
to know
ordinances, municipalities.
Know them. Because like you said, most of the time when it gets gentrified, that's when they start building or rebuilding or building more things that wasn't there before. But at the same time, if we, like the house next door to me, if I wanted to, I could buy it. Or I could buy the land next to it and make a garden. You can buy the land if you wanted to, or the block can buy the land. It's I think it's like an older house that's at the end of the street when you first turn in on my street. The block captain had that renovated and fixed so we can have, price value of our houses go up. If you can do that, you can buy that land too. You know what I'm saying? If we come together, if it's not just one person, because I can't say this one person can do it, but collective. If we all, together, because then it'll mean more if it's not just one person doing it themselves. It's going to mean more to that person that does the whole, but if we all, I
think that also gets back to what we were talking about initiative. Having the initiative to say, like, we are a collective, and we do need to work together. I think that gets also into, like, in the West and in America, we have all these ideas about individualism. I'm an individual. I'm me. Everything all about me. Everybody knows that, like, especially on my channel, I'm all about collectives. Like, what could we do as a group? You know, like, we are Black Americans. We got to start thinking as a ethnic collective. Like, what can we do? What's best for us?
Right.
And how could we work together to get things done? Because it's true. It's like a lot of stuff can't get done.
It can.
One person maybe can't do it, but like, maybe the whole block.
Together, right. Together, if we, you know, and that's with the block captain and block leaders and being on a block. Back in the day, you knew everybody, your neighbors, people across the street from you. Hey, how you doing, Steve? How you doing, Bob? Or hey, whatever. Nowadays, it's like nobody says anything. Like you said, the individualism. I don't have to talk to them. They old folks or they too young. I ain't gonna talk to them. Bye. You don't know your neighbors. You don't know what's going on. You don't know if they going through something. Back in the day, if you was sick, a little child sick, the neighbor bring you some chicken soup or bring you something. You know what I'm saying? To make you know that they know that you going through something. They there for you. We don't have that for real on my block. I can speak for my block. We don't have that type of. On the block party days that we did have a block party, it was like one person there, and I was like. No, you know.
Were you that one person?
Yeah, and I'm like, I'll just take the soda and go, because I thought everybody was going to be here, like, talking and saying what we need to do for the block and stuff. Like, I remember being a child, and when we stayed on Washington, every block party, we would have cars blocking off. It was a one-way street anyway, blocking off the exit and the entrance.
Yeah.
So the kids stay in. Don't nobody come in or out taking our damn kids. We was on it. You know, back then even then. But at those block parties, the captains and the leaders and the homeowners, we all, well, not me, but they all spoke on what needed to be done. Like, we have potholes, we need to fix some potholes. The church needs to do this. This needed to be done. What y'all can do? I can do this. You can do this. I can do this. You know what I'm saying? Everybody taking initiative, like you said, to pick something that they have a skill in or that they're already doing anyway, getting paid by somebody that's going to take taxes out your money, that's not going to help you benefit yourself or your community, when you can use that same skill to help and better your community. And then while you bettering your community, you don't know what seeds you are planting for the next generation to be helping that community. And it keeps, like you're saying, we ain't got to move. If we keep on recycling within our community, it'll eventually get better. But if we don't, it's going to go somewhere else and their community's going to get better.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying? So,
That's good. I think we could end there. That was like a strong point. That's great.
That was good.
That was so good. I feel rejuvenated by that conversation. Right.